The clock struck midnight in the small town of Briarwood, Oregon, and the world outside was cloaked in an eerie silence. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl and your heart race. For 25-year-old Emily Carter, this was the kind of night she usually avoided. But tonight was different. Tonight, she had no choice. Emily stood in the dimly lit attic of her childhood home, a place she hadn't set foot in for over a decade. The air was thick with dust, and the faint scent of old wood and mothballs filled her nostrils. In her hand, she held a rusted key, a key she had found hidden beneath the floorboards of her late mother's bedroom. A key that had led her here, to this very moment. The attic was a maze of forgotten memories. Boxes stacked high, old furniture covered in white sheets, and photo albums that hadn't been touched in years. But Emily wasn't here for nostalgia. She was here for answers. Her mother, Margaret Carter, had passed away 3 months ago, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Margaret had always been a woman of few words, her past shrouded in mystery. Emily had never known her father, and every time she had asked about him, Margaret would change the subject or simply walk away. It was as if his name was a forbidden word, a secret too dangerous to utter. But now, with Margaret gone, Emily was determined to uncover the truth. And that key, that small, rusted key, was her first clue. Emily's hands trembled as she approached an old, wooden trunk tucked away in the corner of the attic. The trunk was covered in a thick layer of dust, and the lock was rusted shut. She inserted the key, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, it didn't budge. But then, with a loud click, the lock gave way. Emily took a deep breath and opened the trunk. Inside, she found a collection of old letters, photographs, and a small, leather-bound journal. Her hands shook as she picked up the journal, its pages yellowed with age. She opened it, and her eyes fell on the first page. Asterisk, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here. And if you found this journal, it means you've discovered the key to my past, a past I've kept hidden for far too long. Emily, my dear, there are things you need to know. Things about me, about your father, and about the life we left behind. But be warned, the truth is not for the faint of heart. Once you know, there's no going back. Asterisk. Emily's heart raced as she flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning the words her mother had written so many years ago. The journal was filled with entries detailing a life Emily had never known, a life of love, betrayal, and danger. As she read, Emily learned that her father, Daniel Carter, had been a man of great ambition and even greater secrets. He had been involved in something dark, something that had forced Margaret to flee in the dead of night, taking Emily with her. But the journal didn't say what that something was. It only hinted at a danger that still lurked in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Emily's mind raced. Who was her father? What had he been involved in? And why had her mother kept all of this hidden for so long? She reached for the stack of letters next. They were addressed to Margaret, all from the same person, a man named Victor Hayes. The letters were filled with warnings, urging Margaret to stay hidden, to protect Emily at all costs. One letter stood out. Asterisk, Margaret, they're getting closer. You need to disappear. Take Emily and go somewhere they'll never find you. If they discover the truth, it won't just be your life at stake, it will be hers too. Asterisk. Emily's hands trembled as she read the words. Who were they? And what truth were they after? Her eyes fell on the photographs next. They were old, faded, but still clear enough to make out the faces. One photo caught her attention, a picture of her mother, young and smiling, standing next to a man Emily had never seen before. He was tall, with piercing eyes and a strong jawline. There was something familiar about him, something that made Emily's heart ache. Daniel. Her father. Emily's breath hitched as she stared at the photo. For the first time in her life, she was looking at the man who had given her life. But instead of feeling joy, she felt a deep, gnawing fear. What had he done? What had he been involved in? And why had her mother been so afraid? As she sifted through the rest of the contents of the trunk, Emily found something else, a small, folded piece of paper tucked away at the bottom. She unfolded it, her hands shaking, and her eyes widened as she read the words written in her mother's handwriting. Emily, if you're reading this, it means the time has come. The truth is out there, and it's up to you to find it. But be careful. Trust no one. Not even those closest to you. The shadows are watching, and they will stop at nothing to keep the secret buried. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. What secret? What were the shadows? And who could she trust? She didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing for certain, she couldn't stop now. She had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. The next morning, Emily packed the journal, letters, and photographs into a bag and set out for Portland, Oregon, the last place her mother had lived before they moved to Briarwood. She had no idea where to start, but she knew she had to follow the trail her mother had left behind. Her first stop was the address on one of Victor Hayes' letters, a small, run-down apartment building on the outskirts of the city. The building looked like it hadn't been maintained in years, and the air smelled of mildew and decay. Emily's heart raced as she knocked on the door of apartment 3B. There was no answer. She knocked again, louder this time, and after a few moments, the door creaked open. A man in his late 50s stood in the doorway, his face lined with age and his eyes filled with suspicion. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice gruff. "My name is Emily Carter," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm looking for Victor Hayes." The man's eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked as if he had seen a ghost. "You're Margaret's daughter," he said, more a statement than a question. Emily nodded. "Yes. I need to know the truth about my father." "About what happened?" Victor hesitated, then stepped aside. "You'd better come in." Over the next few hours, Victor told Emily everything. Her father, Daniel Carter, had been a journalist investigating a powerful crime syndicate operating out of Portland. He had uncovered evidence that could bring down some of the most influential people in the city, politicians, businessmen, even law enforcement. But before he could expose them, he had disappeared. "Your mother knew too much," Victor said, his voice heavy with regret. "They were after her too. That's why she ran. That's why she kept you hidden." Emily's mind reeled. Her father hadn't abandoned them. He had been taken. And her mother had spent her entire life protecting her from the same fate. "Do you know where my father is now?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor shook his head. "No one knows. But if you want to find out, you'll have to be careful. These people don't play games. If they find out who you are, they'll come after you." Emily spent the next few weeks digging deeper, following every lead she could find. She uncovered more about the syndicate, about the people her father had been investigating. And then, one night, she received a phone call. "Emily Carter," a voice on the other end said. "We know who you are. And we know what you're looking for." Emily's heart raced. "Who is this?" "Let's just say we have a mutual interest in your father," the voice said. "If you want to see him alive, meet us at the old warehouse on 5th Street. Come alone." Emily knew it was a trap. But she also knew she had no choice. She had to face the shadows if she wanted to uncover the truth. The warehouse was dark and abandoned, the air thick with tension. Emily stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. And then, she saw him. Her father. Daniel Carter was older, his face lined with years of hardship, but there was no mistaking him. He was tied to a chair, his eyes filled with fear. "Emily," he said, his voice trembling. "You shouldn't have come." Before Emily could respond, the lights flickered on, and she found herself surrounded by men in black suits, their faces cold and unreadable. "You've been a thorn in our side for far too long," one of them said, stepping forward. "But tonight, it ends." Emily's mind raced. She had no weapons, no way to fight back. But then, she remembered her mother's words, the shadows are watching, and they will stop at nothing to keep the secret buried. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. If you're going to kill me, then do it. But know this, I'm not afraid of you. And I'll never stop fighting for the truth. The man smirked. Brave words. But bravery won't save you. And then, just as he raised his gun, the sound of sirens filled the air. The warehouse doors burst open, and a swarm of FBI agents stormed in, guns drawn. Freeze! FBI, one of them shouted. The men in black suits hesitated, then dropped their weapons and raised their hands. Emily's heart raced as she watched them being handcuffed and led away. As the chaos died down, Emily ran to her father, untied him, and threw her arms around him. I thought I'd never see you again, she said, tears streaming down her face. Daniel held her tightly. I'm so sorry, Emily. I never wanted you to get involved in this. I'm just glad you're alive, she said, pulling back to look at him. We have so much to catch up on. Daniel smiled, his eyes filled with tears. We do. And this time, I'm not going anywhere. Emily had uncovered the truth, faced the shadows, and come out stronger on the other side. She had found her father, and together, they would rebuild the life that had been taken from them. The shadows had tried to keep their secret buried, but Emily had brought it into the light. And in doing so, she had found not just the truth, but herself.